Hello, amazing people. It's time for another hot lap. Buckle up, get your helmet, and let's go for a ride. This week, we're going to be diving into the worlds of Formula One and NASCAR as we break down week 2 of Formula One, as well as the NASCAR race that took place in Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, starting off this week, we're going to start in the world of Formula One, but we are not going to be starting with the race. We're going to go ahead and hop into what is happening at the Red Bull melting pot. The pot keeps getting stirred at Red Bull Racing. Rumors emerge about Red Bull letting go of team principal Christian Horner, as well as the new rumor about Red Bull chief executive Helmut Marko, who is under investigation himself. Max Verstappen even threatened to leave this weekend after it emerged that there was possibility that Verstappen's ally, Helmut Marko, could be forced out. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff made a remark that he would, quote, love to have him, but first we need to sort out the car, he explained. I think we owe it to our drivers, George, Russell, and Lewis Hamilton, to improve the car and give them equipment that is good before dreaming about the future. I do not think that dreaming is a great descriptor for what it is. I think it is quite possible that that will be the future, as we see Lewis Hamilton signing his contract to go to Ferrari at the end of the season, vacating that Mercedes spot. And with all of this investigation and everything happening, Max Verstappen's dad, we talked about it last week, is very upset about the situation happening at Red Bull. He has talked himself to Toto Wolff, which could lead Max, the 3-time world champion, to leave the energy drink team. Making remarks like this makes it seem as if Helmut is forced out and that Max would leave to go to the Mercedes team, who appears to be leading the race for the 3-time world champion, as we just talked about, with that vacating seat opening up. To sweeten the deal, however, Toto Wolff wasn't done there. He also made a cheeky comment about offering Helmut Marko a job if he were to be released by the Red Bull team himself. Helmut Marko has been placed under investigation by the Red Bull energy drink company, as the team was suspicious that Marko may have been one of the people who leaked confidential information about the energy drink crisis to a journalist regarding the allegations surrounding their team principal, Christian Horner. Nothing has emerged more about the Christian Horner case. I think most of the internal investigations going on right now are about trying to figure out if 100% of the truth was released. Maybe some of the information that was leaked may have been from Helmut Marko. I think figuring that out is probably the next step in kind of the Red Bull, like what's going to happen in Red Bull's future if they fall apart, if they don't, if Max stays, if Max leaves, if Helmut Marko stays. I do believe that if anything comes out as factual, either Helmut Marko being the one who leaked a bunch of the information or the allegations being correct about Christian Horner, then the team will fall apart and Max will end up at Mercedes next season, maybe alongside Helmut Marko. But only time will tell. The next kind of information batch that gets released about the case will be crucial for the future of the team. I also saw that the female co-worker who put out the allegations has been on leave from the team. She didn't get fired. She got placed on like a layoff where she's getting full pay still, but is not working for the company. So I think that if the allegations do come out to be false, then maybe, she should definitely lose her job. Maybe investigation should be done further as to whether Helmut Marko was kind of involved in like hiring this female employee to get Christian Horner fired, because maybe they do have a rivalry. So I don't really know what is to happen, and only time will tell. All right, let's move into the good stuff for the Formula One Grand Prix that took place in Saudi Arabia. British Ollie Bearman at 18 years of age, steps into Carlos Sainz's Ferrari for qualifying and the race. Carlos Sainz, unfortunately, was diagnosed with appendicitis for the second time and was forced to miss the race due to surgery. Emergency circumstances. Luckily, Carlos Sainz is okay. He did actually make an appearance in the paddock at Saudi Arabia, which is a good nod for him. Good to show up, good to be supportive. Luckily, Carlos Sainz is okay. He went ahead and had a successful operation done. So that was kind of our news outside Formula One, but involved in Formula One. Moving into qualifying. In Q1, we saw Guan Yu Zhou take damage early on, which sent him to the box, and the stake mechanics had quite a job ahead of them if they were going to get him out into Q1 to get a run-in, to get a time on the board to see if he could move on. Behrman's dad, there was a clip of Behrman kind of coming out of a corner and sliding, maybe just barely missing or just barely grazing the barrier. We cut back to his dad in the box, and he was like cringing, and you could just tell that he cared a lot, as you should, about what happens to your son. And it was just funny to see that roller coaster of emotions for him watching his kid, who's taking his first laps in Formula One in a Formula One car during this qualifying session, pushing all out and coming so close to the barrier. He definitely lost some hair that day. He was definitely a little bit stressed out. It was just cute, kind of a funny moment to see. Piastri tapped the wall on his right rear during his first run, which put him on the back foot for the rest of the qualifying. Luckily, he was able to make it out. The stake mechanics pulled an absolute masterclass. It did not look like they were going to have enough time to get Zhou's car out and get him on a lap, but Zhou did end up making it out of the garage, but he did not end up performing a full lap, so he was out in Q1, as well as his teammate Bottas, both Alpine drivers, and Logan Sargent, which is actually the same 5 that got knocked out in Bahrain last weekend. In Q2, we got Nico Hülkenberg losing power of his Ferrari engine in the Haas at the start of Q2, causing him to pull over on the side of the road. There was a red flag with 10 minutes left in the session. After that, all the drivers went out, performed their laps. Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, Magnussen, Albon, and Behrman all got the short end of the stick there, went out in Q2. Ollie Behrman put in a good lap. It just was not good enough for 10th. He will be starting 11th during the race. In Q3, we've got Max, Charles, and Perez in the top 3, followed by Fernando Alonso, 2 McLarens, then the Mercedes, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll. So that is our qualifying lineup. Let's go ahead and get into the race. Race start, we see Lando jump off the line. George Russell was on the radio pretty much straight away, tattling, telling his mechanics at Mercedes that Lando had jumped. They said, they're going to note it, bring it up. Lando ended up very controversially, Lando ended up not getting a penalty later on in the race. I do think that the jump start, I think there's a lot of gray area in the jump start rule. Like, you can roll, you can't roll out of your pit box, you can't be rolling when the lights go out, but you can move forward still. There's a lot of, like I said, like gray area or inclarity in the rules that probably need to be addressed. Perez and Leclerc were fighting from the start. Perez kept the lead. By the lead, I mean he kept P2 because Max was already gone by this point. Ollie Behrman runs slightly wide into the first turn with no issue. He kept going. Pierre Gasly, in that frickin' Alpine car, was forced to retire. I have it written down here that he was forced to retire about 0.5 laps into the Grand Prix. I think that's false. I think it was more like a quarter of a lap into the Grand Prix. We hear the box, and then he ended up retiring. Piastri overtook Alonso at the start of lap 2 to take 4th place. Good move from the McLaren. McLaren is looking very strong for a high-end midfield, maybe low end of the front of the field this season. Ollie Behrman was getting his elbows out. He had a very, very impressive debut drive. He was not afraid to take the risks. He knew what it meant for him to finish high and perform well in this race. So he was really, really racing the other drivers out there, even going alongside Fernando Alonso and Nico Hülkenberg at the start of the Grand Prix, who are two very much aggressive drivers. Well done from Ollie Behrman. It was a very impressive debut, in my personal opinion. Verstappen, Leclerc, and Perez started pulling away in their own little group of 3 at the end of lap 3. I think Verstappen was about a second ahead, and Perez and Leclerc were battling each other, as I talked about before. However, by the end of lap 4, Sergio Perez passed Charles Leclerc for second, and Max had already pulled away by 2.3 seconds at this point. Lance Stroll went into the barriers on lap 7 into turn 3. He hit the inside of one turn and shot to the outside of the other turn. That the first hit broke his steering, so it sent him into the barrier on the outside. We then hear the lovely radio call of his engineer asking if he can drive back to the pits, to which his response was, "No, I'm in the effing wall." That brought out a full course safety car. Lap 10, the safety cars in. Lando Norris was in charge of getting the pack going again. It took Max Verstappen one corner to get back out in front. He was started P2 right behind Lando. Lando was only on pole for the fact that he had not stopped yet. Max had already stopped, and it took him, like I said, one corner. It took him the main straight to get around Lando Norris. Sergio Perez got a 5-second penalty for unsafe release while we were under safety car conditions and everybody had boxed. Magnussen got a 10-second penalty for a collision that he had with Alex Albon that I think was probably ill-deserved of a penalty. They kind of, yeah, he was there. It was his fault. It didn't look like anybody took too much damage. It didn't look like it was race-ending. It definitely was not race-ending. It was kind of a racing incident. So I don't know if that was fully deserved, but he ended up getting the 10-second penalty. This was crucial for the rest of the race because Magnussen was the driver that was in the last points-paying position, and we had Magnussen with a penalty. The person in front of him had to box, which meant that there was a battle for about 4 cars in that midfield group that were really close together, battling for the last point provisionally after Magnussen was going to get his time penalties applied to him. The person who ended up taking it was his teammate Nico Hülkenberg after Magnussen put in an absolute shift defending those positions for his teammate. Did he know he had a 10-second penalty or more? I think he finished with 15 or 20 seconds worth of penalties. We don't know. Did his engineer tell him? We don't know. He could have been fighting because he genuinely thought it was his spot, but the engineer did thank him after when Hülkenberg had that position. The engineer did thank him, so it makes me think that he did know, and he was really just putting in a shift for the greater good of that Haas team and for his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Lap 21, we saw Behrman overtake Nico Hülkenberg for P9. The battle for the last points in the chaos was between Magnussen, Ocon, and Tsunoda. That's the one I just kind of went over. Albon sent an absolute dive bomb on Tsunoda on lap 33 for 14th place, and Ricciardo had a little battle late in the race to take 13th position. Our top 10 are as follows: Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Piastri, Alonso, Russell, Behrman, Norris, Hülkenberg, and Hamilton. Just kidding. I actually swapped the last 2 for some reason. It's Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Piastri, Alonso, Russell, Behrman, Norris, Hamilton, and Hülkenberg. Those were the top 10 for this race. We're going to go ahead and move into the world of oval racing. Let's talk some NASCAR. In the world of NASCAR in Las Vegas, we have Kyle Larson leading 181 of the 267 laps during the Pennzoil 400 NASCAR Cup Series race in the Las Vegas Motor Speedway this weekend, with Kyle Busch leading the second most at 18 laps. So Kyle Larson had the most laps, 181 of the 267 laps led. Kyle Busch was second most with 18. However, if you thought Larson dominated this race like Max Verstappen's dominating F1, you would be mistaken. Larson had to battle off Tyler Reddick after the restart with 27 laps to go in order to secure his victory. With 2 laps to go, Reddick was only 0.143 seconds behind. That is 143 thousandths of a second behind, which is about a car length. But when 2 laps had passed, Larson sped around the oval for the final time and crossed the line at a more comfortable 0.4 of a second ahead. about 3 car lengths. After the race, Larson said, "I knew Tyler was going to be the guy to beat from the first stage." This is Larson saying it, who won for the first time this season and the 24th time in his career. "He was really fast there. I was hoping those guys were going to get racing a little bit longer behind me in order to give him some time to get ahead, because I felt like I was going to time out when we were running really hard early and getting the tow to catch me at the end." So he was hoping that those behind him would be battling a little bit more for the second position, allowing him to jockey a little bit further ahead, get a little bit more comfortable into the race. The win is the first for Larson this season, the 24th of his career. It is also the 10th win at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway for Hendrick Motorsports, and the 4th consecutive win by a Hendrick Motorsports driver in the track's spring race. So that's good job from Hendrick Motorsports there, all at the Las Vegas and spring wins in a row. Very good. On lap 27 of the 267-lap race, Buescher crashed into the turn 1 wall after losing the right front wheel. There's an investigation going on right now. I believe some penalties and some suspensions have been given out to the mechanics who are working on that car. I do believe that there was a safety violation with that wheel coming off that they later found in doing further investigation into it. Anyways, the impact required a red flag to repair that barrier on the outside wall of turn 1. The wheel came off in pieces, and Buescher explained later that he believed something in the suspension ended up cutting the wheel in half. So just more about the unsafe nature of the wreck itself. As is the norm when the team loses a wheel on track, which is considered a safety violation, NASCAR has suspended 2 RFK racing crew members, Nicholas Patterson and Jacob Prail, for the next 2 points-paying events. They will miss this weekend's race at Phoenix Raceway, as well as the race at Bristol Motor Speedway the following week. The top 10 for the NASCAR race: Larson, Reddick, Blaney, Chastain, Gibbs, Grayson, Truex Jr., Hamlin, Logano, and Byron. Larson, Reddick, Blaney, Chastain, Gibbs, Grayson, Truex Jr., Hamlin, Logano, and Byron. Larson, Reddick, Blaney, Chastain, Gibbs, Grayson, Truex Jr., Hamlin, Logano, and Byron. That is all I have for you guys this week. There was no WEC that happened. I am looking into maybe putting out some shorter episodes, something that's a little bit easier, something that holds your attention a little bit longer in order to kind of boost this podcast up. We may be doing some kind of like tech talk about different mechanisms with the cars and how they work, and like the tire situation or suspension or aerodynamics, like some of the more kind of refined parts, the behind the scenes, if you will, of motorsports. So if you guys are looking forward to that, or if you guys want that, don't forget to leave a like. Let me know in the comments what you think. Subscribe, and feel free to follow my socials. Those will be linked down below. Come back next week as we go over race results and key moments in the motorsports world. Until next time, don't forget to brake late and accelerate early.